All right, so carbon cycle. Again, carbon is also, and then we have the oxygen cycle. It's sort of combined with that. And again, these are biogeochemical. How do we get things from the environment into living things back to the environment? So where do we have carbon in the environment? It's in CO2. CO2 gets put into plants through photosynthesis. CO2 then, and it gets turned into glucose, so C6H12O6. Then we have animals that eat the plants. And then they produce CO2 back through respiration. Okay? So our carbon cycle, it starts in the atmosphere as CO2. It gets fixed, carbon fixation. Remember the dark reactions or the light independent reactions of photosynthesis, the Calvin cycle, turns into glucose. Animals then will eat or consume that glucose, and when we consume that glucose to use energy and to build carbohydrates, and so build glycogen, build proteins, build nucleic acids, all these things, we then release the CO2 back in the atmosphere as respiration. At the same time then, we have oxygen, because when the plants go through photosynthesis, their waste gas is oxygen. Well, animals have to take in oxygen. Okay? We release CO2, but then the oxygen, so the oxygen comes out of photosynthesis, animals then take it in, and then plants then take our CO2 back in and put it, put the oxygen back out. It's the waste product of one and the other. Okay? And the idea of producing, carbohydrates is productivity. All right, so nitrogen, N2 in the air, and we need it in proteins, we need it in nucleic acids, we need it in ATP. However, breathe in and exhale, nitrogen just stays. So nitrogen has to get into the soil by bacteria. And they fix it. So nitrogen fixation, meaning they attach it and they can put that then into plants. So combining that with a fungus, with those mycorrhizae, those fungal roots, and like legumes, so like peas and beans and nuts are good nitrogen fixators. The nitrogen is in plants. An animal eats the nitrogen. We get rid of it through poop, through feces, through urine. It decomposes. And then we have other bacteria that put it back out into the air. So nitrogen has to do a couple different things, but without the bacteria, we wouldn't be able to do either. Yes?
So bacteria fixes the level of the nitrogen in the soil?
So what happens, bacteria, when we talk about fixation, remember in the Calvin cycle, carbon dioxide comes into the Calvin cycle and binds with that RUBP, we call that carbon fixation. Fixation means to attach. So they can take the nitrogen out of the atmosphere, fix it in the soil into a way that the plants can use it. They put it through fungal roots and mycorrhizae into the plants. So now plants have nitrogen, specifically any plant high in protein, beans, peas, nuts. Animals eat that. We get rid of extra nitrogen through feces, but through urine. That's how we get rid of our nitrogen waste and whatever, but we need it because we need to build our DNA, our proteins, and our ATP. It's back in the soil. How does it get out of the soil? Then we need a different species of bacteria to release it back into the soil, to denitrify stuff and release it so then it's back out into the atmosphere.
So when we eat meat, are we eating nitrogen?
Absolutely, yeah, because when you eat meat, you're eating muscle, and muscle is made of protein, and protein is made of those amino acids, and amino acid group, NH2, yep. And that eventually, that protein that you're eating came from the air, and then was fixed by bacteria and put into plants and put into an animal, and then we eat that animal. In some way it was recycled and either pooped, defecated, or urinated out and back in the air, and we've recycled all that again. So yes,
we breathe poop.
You breathe poop. Yeah, technically, yeah. I mean, you're drinking dinosaur, the water cycle's the same thing. It goes around.
Drinking dinosaurs.
Like drinking dinosaurs, yes. All right, phosphorus cycle. Not as important. Phosphorus, though, it's used in nucleic acids. What happens is phosphorus is in rocks. So the weathering of rocks puts phosphorus into the water. Plants then pick up phosphorus. And actually plants, it's fertilizer for plants. So plants will pick up phosphorus, or algae will pick up phosphorus, and then it gets eaten by humans and then gets excreted and things like that when we break back down. So really what they always talk about is what happens if we upset that cycle. You get something called eutrophication. If you ever look at your detergents at home, they say low phosphorus. And if you go, I don't know if any of you have to take care of your garden or take care of your lawn, you look at your lawn, you look at Miracle Grow or any of the fertilizers, it's a high concentration of nitrogen and phosphorus because that's what makes your lawn grow. But too much causes too much bloom, and in this case, eutrophication is when you put phosphorus into a lake or river. Algae love phosphorus, boom, they reproduce a lot. But then what happens? They reproduce and then they die. And then they're down at the bottom, and all those decomposers down at the bottom, those bacteria have a lot to eat. So if they have a lot to eat, what happens to their population? It goes way up, but in the meantime, in order for them to consume to do cellular respiration, what gas do they need? No, they don't need carbon dioxide. To bacteria, what gas do they need to do cellular respiration? O2. So what happens to the level of O2 in the water? It goes down. So what happens to the fish that need the O2 in the water? They drop. What happens to everything else? And then, actually, you get enough of algae bloom. This is how water turns into swamps, and then you lose your wetlands, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Isn't there the wetlands in Brookfield Zoo? Talk about that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Good. What else? Does that make sense for the cycles?
Yeah.
No water cycle? What about that?
Oh, water cycle. Sorry.
No, I was kidding.
All right. No, some water cycle. Okay. So H2O in the air comes down as precipitation. It goes into plants and then comes out of plants through your favorite process this week, transpiration, and back into the air. But then it also comes back out just from the surface through evaporation. And it goes into the groundwater, and then we drink it, and then we exhale it from cellular respiration. But it's really precipitation, transpiration, evaporation that keep that cycle going. And yeah, please make sure you understand not just sort of the lab we did, but why and what the concept was and how that water is moving and going through it. Thank you. Good. What else?
How much do we need to know?
This stuff?